everybody. You are in our class. I am in your house. If you're new, welcome. By the way, if you're watching this in the replay, get on the live stream, get in the Discord. It's where all it happens. And our only rule here is keep an open mind. That's it. All you got to do is just keep an open mind. Some of the best opportunities in my entire life have come from me challenging my own assumptions about things. About DAWs, for instance, like Ableton, that Ableton sucks, or its summing bus sucks, or it's only meant for production. Huge gains in my entire life by using Ableton. So for starters, that's definitely the first one. Get it in your heads that it's not the tools, it's how you use them. We're going to be working in Ableton today. If you're a Pro Tools person, if you're a Logic person, if you're a Fruity Loops person, again, what we're doing is it's not about the DAW today. It's not about the DAW in general. It's about understanding the tools and understanding our workflow and getting the biggest gains out of our time spent, period. And you can do that in any DAW you choose. For mastering, I am working in Ableton. Don't shoot me. It's what I put out so many chart-topping Billboard hits through Ableton. I say just give it a shot. Give it a shot. Let's go to Ableton. So, we're in Ableton. To begin with today, I'm just going to kind of demonstrate the reasoning behind why certain types of limiting help you, but then also harm you, and I'm going to demonstrate exactly what that is, and then hopefully, at the end of it, all of you will have some new superpowers, which is the entire point of the approach. It's all about making sure you have my superpowers. So let's get into it. This is a super basic sine wave. It's just a sub playing a melody line. Let me demonstrate. This should not blow anybody's minds. This is just a very basic, I think it's in A flat minor melody line. And you can see here in Insight, it's a pure tone. There's no harmonics associated with this. It's just a single tone. But what a lot of us do when we get into mastering, we want to make something loud, we want to put it out, we start to limit. And we will begin to just apply limiting. And so what I'm going to show you is the artifacts that begin to present themselves as we get into limiting and as limiting becomes heavier and heavier handed. So check it out. I've got Ableton's limiter here. Any limiter, any brick wall limiter will do this. I'm just using stock plugins. There's nothing fancy here. Allow me to demonstrate the kinds of things that happen, and just know that the levels are going to be kind of going up and down a little bit today, so mind your ears. Here we go. You can notice there's already harmonics that are beginning to show up. So this was a pure tone, and I added 6 dB, and we're getting a little bit of reduction. And immediately you can begin to see the sideband harmonics. I'm going to keep turning this up now. We're going to get up to like 10. And now you can see we have like nearly even order all the way to the top harmonic structure coming from a pure sine wave, just going into limiting. And those are some of the artifacts that you will encounter when you're trying to make your music louder. There's nothing good or inherently bad about any of this stuff. But I think the one key thing to keep in mind is if you are doing mastering and you are taking anything that has its dynamic range and you're making it smaller, if you're going from, let's say, a pre-master that looks about like this to a master that looks maybe about like this, it's going to be distorted. It's just the name of the game. You can't make something look that different and not have it have some aspects of distortion. I mean, you can even look here if you've got these clean, wavy lines and then they start to get bricked off. That is in and of itself distortion. It's not necessarily clipping. It's just going to be distortion. So the key thing is what we're trying to take away from today is being able to hear the different types of distortion that present themselves within a mastering chain. Because if you can hear them, you can either you can get away from them, you can figure out what's creating them or causing them, you can adjust them, or you can maybe even work with your mix engineers yourself, if you're the mix engineer, the producer, to find ways to hide the distortion, which we're going to get into later. Today, it's all about being able to hear that. So for starters, the one thing to keep in mind is when you start to hear these harmonics come up, it's got kind of like a low frequency, it's got like a to it. It's almost like a growl that begins to present itself as those harmonics take shape. So as we add more drive into limiting, those harmonics begin to present themselves, and they've got that kind of ness to them. So when you're listening for too much limiting or harmonic enhancement from limiting, and what I would consider this to be, which is basically amplitude modulation distortion, and it's associated with the timing profile of the limiter. So it's not just that all limiters do this, it's because of the way the limiter is set up, you will get more or less of this. And that's the key thing to keep in mind. Like I said, it's not just that you're always going to have distortion, it's just how can you avoid it when it starts to show up, and are you aware enough of it when it begins to present itself? So I've got 12 dB on this limiter. I've got sideband harmonics. I can adjust this limiter's settings to remove that because, like I said a second ago, the harmonics are actually being created due to the speed of the timing profile. The quickness of the attack and the release are actually what's making these harmonics show up. It is harmonic to the material that we're pumping through it. It's not inharmonic. And so I can make this go away, or I can make it worse. Like, look, so I'll play it back again. We've got our harmonics. If I start to play with the release of the limiter, these will go away because it's not working so fast and you don't get those additional tones. Allow me to demonstrate. And they start to fall away, and they start to fall away, and they start to fall away. And you can see now, with 3 seconds of release, we have much less harmonics being added. Now, how much actual level did we lose? It seems almost, it's like within the ear itself. Let's open this up and we'll check our levels. I don't believe that we've actually lost that much in either RMS or in peak. RMS is minus 0.2. Okay. A small shift in RMS, like 0.2, 0.3 dB in RMS and differential between one release time and the other. Now, having incredibly slow release times are going to get you away from having, the amplitude modulation distortion from the speed. But you have a different trade-off when you start getting that slow. The limiters will begin to pump and breathe. So let's do something else. So instead of pulling the release over, let's play with the look ahead. So the look ahead is going to allow the limiter to actually work in advance. It's basically just like a delay on the input signal that gets redelayed based upon its delay. So then things aren't late. It's not actually delaying your signal. What it's doing is it's saying now, instead of having everything just working and not knowing what's coming, I can delay the signal a little bit, and now I have all this amount of time within the side chain of the limiter to understand what's about to happen and get ready. And so then you can have incredibly quick attack times with less artifacts because you know what's about to happen. The limiter can get ready, and that's what look ahead's for. So in a similar way, I've got these artifacts, but let's just say I increase the look ahead. So now I have more time for the limiter to get ready, which allows it to have a quicker attack time with less artifacts. And it's kind of hard to tell. You should be able to hear it, but you can definitely hear with your ears. Let me crank this up like crazy. Yeah, huge differential when you see it at this infinite maximum. And especially when I go to 1.5 milliseconds, you can really start to hear that amplitude modulation distortion. So if you're pushing your masters super, super, super loud, and you're finding out that, well, it's getting loud, but there's also all of these really dirty, gnarly artifacts in there, and it's kind of like, it's kind of growly at me. It's kind of nasally, like sounds like a metal singer is kind of like getting ready to do something. that's your amplitude modulation distortion, and it's coming from your timing profiles and your limiting. I think for most of us, we don't get an opportunity to actually hear the distortion. So I have come up with a couple different ways with which we can actually hear the distortion. Let's do it. I have a very basic limiter here. This is PSP Xenon. It is a brick wall limiter. It's one of the most transparent brick wall limiters available. And Bobcats loves it. I think it's a great limiter, but allow me to demonstrate exactly what you get, the type of artifacts that you're going to be hearing when you push brick walls too far. Big shout outs, by the way, before we get going on this, to Anderson Gallegos, Mr. Mersiv himself, one of our students, put this collabo out. Its song is called Get to You, or it's a remix, excuse me. I'm going to get killed. It's a remix of Get to You by Mersiv. Absolutely huge tune. Super in love with it. We did this master a little while ago. It came out doing quite well. The fans love it. And yeah, I'm gonna play this back, and then I'm gonna start adding some limiting. So I'm gonna get your ears used to it. We're gonna listen to it, and then I'm gonna start adding some limiting. Of course, I'm gonna go overboard, and then I'm gonna actually subtract the limiting, and we're just gonna be left with the artifacts. Ready? Here we go. So, a couple different things happened when I started increasing that gain. It gets crunchy. There's a distinct crunchiness that begins to take shape. Another issue that we start to have as well in this situation, I don't know if you noticed that in the turnaround, is when you're adding so much gain and you're limiting on the master bus, you're going to find these moments when the bass pulls out that the level will jump. Take a listen. That's because we lose what's occupying the headroom, and you can watch the limiter stop reacting, and all that gain that I boosted just gets added to the signal and it flies up. One more time. You can really hear the level jump difference there. So now at this point, obviously it's crunchy, but what does that really sound like? It's such a weird gradient as we go up. This is a very transparent limiter. So of course, as I add more gain, it's going to be very transparent. It's going to be difficult to hear the artifacts. And then it just kind of gets crunchy. But it's really hard to actually accurately describe what the crunchiness is. And so that's why I've built these null tests, is to actually show you all what the crunchiness sounds like. So this is artifacting from brick wall limiting that's been overdriven, and you'll notice most of these things you're going to start to find when you get about 6 dB reduction or more on your limiters. These types of artifacts will present themselves specifically in brick wall limiting. So, so I know for most of you that we didn't know that was in there, but I absolutely promise that is what we're adding to this signal right now. That is the artifacts that you get when you drive these things up. So that crunch that was kind of obvious to begin with is now super overt. And you can see it's full band. Absolutely full band distortion. And it's driving mostly off the lows. And you can hear how the distortion goes away when there is no low end present. It's the same thing over here. And then distortion again. So it should be eye-opening to all of you at home why it's good, it's louder now, but there's something about it that I don't like. This is the thing you don't like about it. So that's just brick wall limiting. You'll get this sort of grungy, crunchy distortion. It's going to present itself. It's going to be harmonic. It's going to sound as though everything got a little bit, like not bit crushed, but just dirty. dirty and folding, and it's not that pleasant of a sound. Brick walling, those are good limiters. They're great for certain instances, and we're going to get into where you use them, but overdriven brick walling gives you that. It is not a super fun experience. So there's other kinds of limiting. Let's go into some soft clipping. So I'm just going to use, right now I'm using a glue compressor, not because of its compression, but just because it has a soft clip feature. It's an easy limiter to showcase. It's kind of the in-between. There are lots of limiters out there that have soft clipping as a feature. And so let's see what we can get out of some soft clipping. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to gain this up. I'm just going to add gain, same way I did on the PSP, into the soft clipping, and we're going to listen to the two, okay? And you can see clipping light is on, meaning soft clipping is happening now. The signal is driving over 0, and the soft clipping feature is bringing it back under, which is how we're staying in the green on the master bus. So you can hear again, it's starting to get crunchy, but it's not the same kind of crunch. It's not exactly the same. And so let's do the same move again. Let's invert them and let's listen to the differential. That is the distortion you get from soft clipping. And it's why it sounds buzzy and dirty. And so when you're driving any limiter too far with soft clipping around, it will present itself as this type of artifact. You will always get this sort of buzzy crunchiness. And it can be argued that one of these is better than the others, because that's the other thing about it. It's not just the artifacts at play, it's how the signal is being affected by the tool. So not just being able to hear the distortion when it presents itself, but also understanding how that dynamic processor is affecting your signal.